Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick comparison between the Samsung Galaxy Tab S7 Plus on the left and the Tab S6 on the right. Now you may be asking yourself, why am I not comparing the Tab S6 to the Tab S7? Simply put, the Tab S7 isn't worth purchasing. Even though it has a new processor, 120 hertz panel, it isn't a Super AMOLED display. And I do not think that any tablet in 2020, that's inclusive of the iPad, is worth purchasing if they do not sport an AMOLED display. If you're still working with a traditional IPS LCD, then you're pretty much, in my opinion, screwing consumers. And fresh money should not support old technology, in my opinion. That's my personal opinion. So now let's focus on the Tab S6 versus, again, the 7 Plus. And by the way, on that note, if you're trying to determine whether or not you should buy the Tab S6 or Tab S7, go with the Tab S6, because some of you will not want the larger Tab S7 Plus, which I completely understand. So if mobility is what you're after, this is the tablet to go with, even when compared to the brand new Tab S7. Now, between these two, important things to know, and I'll state this right here at the top of the video, I do prefer the brand new Tab S7 Plus, and that's because the display quality seems to be nearly identical. They are both right now at 100% brightness. They're both in vivid mode, no adaptive brightness control. And already, I think you can instantly see the difference between the 120 hertz and the 60 hertz. Now, it's not a world of difference, but it's relevant, especially if you plan on using this as a tablet. And there is something very nice about having that smooth scrolling that just doesn't exist on a 60 hertz panel. That's the first thing. The second thing is the S Pen experience itself. Now, what I can tell you is they have changed the S Pen. I know it's fairly dark with the contrast from the screens, but we went from a flat pen in the Tab S6 that really looked like a carpenter's pencil, similar to the Surface Slim Pen, back to a more rounded design here with the Tab S7 Plus. And I do prefer this, believe it or not. I do like the rounded version better, but that's not what's important here. What's important is that the latency has been improved in the Tab S7 Plus. So if pen input is important to you, then the Tab S7 Plus is the winner, because you're getting the same benefit that you'll find with the brand new Note 20 Ultra. However, here, in order to get the 120 hertz refresh rate, you have to run it at full HD. You cannot use the native resolution of that 6.9-inch display. Here, you can use the native nearly 3K resolution that this 12.4-inch panel has with 120 hertz. So again, from purely a display standpoint and S Pen experience, this is the tablet to own. If you need something smaller, this is the tablet to own. It's really that simple. In terms of processor, you've got a Snapdragon 855 versus a Snapdragon 865 Plus. The 865 Plus is the latest and greatest, but it's not going to run circles around the Tab S6. Both of these are completely competent, not just as media consumption tools, but also as productivity machines. But one key difference, besides what I mentioned about the processor, and I haven't even touched on RAM or internal storage, is the actual keyboard cover case. Now, with the Tab S6, the keyboard cover case was a disaster. Whether or not it would stay on was a crapshoot. Samsung fixed that with this generation, and I've covered it in an unboxing. I haven't done an update yet, but it is a critical fix because now it's completely magnetic, which means you don't have to worry about the kickstand falling off, which means this really legitimately has a significant edge when it comes to being a productivity machine if you want to run DeX, which is Samsung's operating system, essentially their desktop feel for the tablet rather than just, simply native Android. You've got that going for you. And it is a big difference to have a keyboard combo that will actually work. And look, there are many people that have said the Tab S6 keyboard cover has worked fine for them. I went through two of them, had problems, and that just shouldn't be happening on a premium tablet. Now, with regard to pricing, this is the 128 gig model, which retails for $850 US. The Tab S6 that I have here is the 256 gig model, which has 8 gigs of RAM. This has 6. In order to get the same 8 gigs that I have in this model, you will have to step up to the 256, which is $930 US. So keep that in mind. Many of you will opt for the standard base 128, and 6 gigs of RAM will be fine. But if you really do plan on using this for productivity, I suggest going with the 256 model that has the 8 gigs. Would I like to see Samsung give us a 12 gig option? Of course. Remember, storage is expandable on both of these. There is a micro SD card slot. These are both Wi-Fi only, by the way, although you can get this tablet, the 7 Plus, with 5G on board if you opt to. You'll also notice that the camera, the selfie camera, has been relocated on this tablet to the center top, whereas on this one, it's on the left side. And that's because Samsung still was trying to find their way to basically move away from what Apple had forced on the industry, which was a portrait world. And quite frankly, with a 12.4-inch display like the 7 Plus Sports, we are now on the border, just like the iPad Pro at 12.9 inches, of hitting Ultrabook territory. And that's another reason I think this is the better buy. There's nothing wrong with a small and light tablet, but if you want something that's going to be the best of both worlds and can actually get work done, in my opinion, personally, in a better and more efficient way, this is the tablet that's going to do it. Not because it has more horsepower, not because of the 120 hertz screen, but because it is a larger display, and in addition to that, has, as I've mentioned, the keyboard cover, book cover, that actually will work the way it should and not possibly fall off and break your tablet. Okay, and there are a lot of people that have said they can't even get the other cover off. So for those of you who say, my cover never fell off, well, then you have the flip side of having to, heat it up to try to, and then use a knife, as many of you have commented, in order just to remove it. And that's ridiculous. So even if you got it to stick, that's absurd. Now, with the S Pen, if you don't care about the S Pen, it doesn't matter. But if you do, I mentioned the latency here is greatly improved. And let's go ahead and just open up, create a note. And this may or may not come across on here as really giving you a good, as giving you a good idea of the performance difference. I'm going to try to do it simultaneously. I'm somewhat ambidextrous, but you know what? Let's do it one at a time. How about that? So if I start and just give you a line and then start light, go back to light, I can see the latency on here. It's not bad, but it does exist. I'll go back to using my right hand. Here, things are just a lot smoother. I'll go light and then put some pressure, go light, pressure, light again, pressure. I mean, for me personally, they are very, very close. And this is not an inking comparison, but there is no question that the technology Samsung employed here in the Tab S7 Plus and the S7, even though I will not recommend that tablet, because I think this one, the S6, is the better buy, dollar for dollar, they did make a tangible improvement in the latency for the S Pen. So if the S Pen experience is important to you, the fact that you have a larger display and less latency is a win-win all around. As I mentioned, the difference between the Snapdragon 865 and 865 Plus isn't a world of difference. And the fact that I've got 6 gigs of RAM versus 8 here isn't a world of difference either. Not when it comes to S Pen performance especially. So I want to make that really clear. And if I try to do this simultaneously, which I will, I'll just try to go corner to corner. Again, repeat it. They're going to look really similar. And trust me, they are really similar. Both give you pretty much best-in-class, I wish I could do a better job here, best-in-class experiences. But there's no question that there is a slight, if not significant, edge that goes to the Tab S7 Plus. Now, beyond the S Pen experience, when it comes to battery life, The battery in the 7 Plus is huge. It's nearly 11,000 milliamp hours, whereas here I think we're seated at around, it's under 8,000 or roughly thereabout. So battery life is very similar. And even though this battery is much larger, keep in mind, the screen is significantly larger. We're going from 10.5 inches to 12.5, 10.5 to 12.4. And then you've got the 120 hertz refresh rate, which does take a toll on battery life. So on battery, I'm going to say about a wash, but neither will have a battery life problem. In fact, neither will have a problem handling anything that you throw at them. And that's the beauty. But one thing you may have noticed right now is that there is a difference, in spite of me having them both in vivid mode, both of them at 100% brightness. I said the panel qualities are almost identical, but they're not, because after all, they aren't the same panel. And right now, at least to my eye, the white background on this is white, whereas here we're a little bit warmer. Now that may just be one example, because in web browsing, I didn't really see that difference. If I go ahead and close this out, God knows those aren't worth saving, right? Not at least in my opinion. And I go ahead, jump back to Chrome. They look really similar. So it's really a matter of personal preference, I think. I don't recommend going to see these in store, because I'd rather all of you get through the pandemic. And this is not fear mongering, it's just a fact. This is not exposure that's worthwhile to go into a store to see these, in my opinion, although many people will do that. But I don't think there's a drastic enough difference between these two panels. Both of them look really good for me to say one is better than the other. Right now, this looks a little bit warmer. That may have something to do with the lighting in my studio. It may not. But either way, again, the actual screen real estate afforded by the 7 Plus, the 120 hertz refresh rate, the slightly higher resolution, although I believe the pixel density is higher in the 10.5 inch Tab S6. The point is, at the end of the day, I do think this is the better tablet. Both of these have quad speakers, so 2 on each side. Both are fairly loud. I will say that the Tab S7 Plus is louder, but it should be. It's a bigger device. The Tab S7 Plus is also thicker. And again, it should be. It's a bigger device. So I don't think you'll go wrong with either of these. But if, again, you care at all about the pen experience, it's very obvious that you will appreciate having the larger display. You will appreciate the 120 hertz, and you will appreciate the new S Pen, as well as the latency difference between the two models. Again, it's not night and day, but it's enough that if you're an artist, you will notice it. Now, for me, with general note-taking, I won't notice much of a difference. But for my fiance, inking on these, she has noticed quite a difference between the two. So that's why I'm reiterating, if you're all about the pen, if you're all about the productivity end, the keyboard cover dock, the book cover, then this is the way to go. Especially if only $100 or $200 separates these two tablets in terms of pricing. And I have no problem recommending the 6 gig model, although I personally, yes, I'm giving in, will be ordering. I did purchase this, but I'm going to do the trade-in with Samsung and trade in my Tab S6. That tells you already how I feel about the new Tab S7 Plus. So they're going to give me $450. I intend to do this today towards the 256 model that I'll be going with. I do want the 8 gigs of RAM, even though I'll never see that on trade-in, just like I'm not now. They're only going to give me $450, whether I have, the base 128 versus the 256, and that is 6 versus 8 gigs of RAM with the Tab S6. I still, for my own need, will go with the 8 gig model, because I'd rather have the headroom, even if I'm not going to see it on the trade-in value. But again, overall, these are the 2 best Android tablets ever made. But of course, the brand new Tab S7 Plus is the king of the hill. And it brings back a lot of the lineage that when I first started my channel and first got to, review and cover Samsung's 10.1 Note tablet, and then, of course, their 12.2, this brings that back to me. And I'm so happy to see it because Apple has owned market share with the iPad Pro now for so long for literally no good reason. And Samsung is finally back at it, not trying to imitate, but finally realizing that they have their own brand, they have their own identity, they sell tens of millions of devices. And by the way, I haven't even touched on cameras. They are good. They're not, Note 20 Pro good, but as far as tablets go, they're fantastic and not a huge leap between these two models. That's one of the reasons I didn't focus on them. And then, of course, to charge it on each tablet, you're going to just lay the pen. Now, on the square one, you could see there was an actual contact point to clarify where it had to go to actually charge, and it magnetically just will sit there. The same thing applies here. And you don't have to be a genius to figure this out. When you drop it on, either way, it either lines up or it doesn't. You see how it didn't there? And then, more importantly, when it is lined up, you will hear a little audio notification that will actually indicate, because that is the correct way, what I just did there, that we are now charging. So if I remove it, you see it's now charging. It's at 100%. And the same will be true of the Tab S7 Plus. When I flip it over, remove it, hopefully, and there you have it. It's not charging, apparently. So either way, these are the two best tablets, in my opinion, not just Android tablets ever made. And because this can literally push and blur the line between tablet and Ultrabook, because Qualcomm's hardware is there, Samsung's hardware is there, and One UI, by the way, I remember the days that TouchWiz was a nightmare, and now it's a pleasure. And by the way, this is that old, very similar to that old wallpaper where it all began. So that also tells you a lot about Samsung recognizing, realizing their lineage, and embracing it, and I'm so glad they have. I know I said this would be a quick comparison, but welcome to the Digital Digest. It is not quick, and that's because when you're spending this kind of money, which ultimately will be close to $1,000 or a little bit less after taxes, I feel a responsibility not only to tell you the truth, but also to give you my best look at every element the tablet has to offer. And the Tab S7 Plus is that best effort from Samsung, no question about it. This is the realization of their business in a tablet form here in 2020. Another great product from them. They are really hitting grand slams this year. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. And please stay safe. Later.